Welcome back to Questing Beast. I'm Ben. Today we'll be taking a look at this review copy that I was sent of Magical Murder Mansion, which is a challenging funhouse dungeon by Skerples. Skerples is the author of a number of other books that I have reviewed on this channel, including things like Tomb of the Serpent Kings and Kidnap the Archpriest. Before we get started, though, quick shout out to some of my new Patreon supporters: Max Shorokov, Joseph Farkas, Matthew House, Greg Kelly, and Shannon Lewis. Thank you so much to all these people for supporting the channel. It's what keeps this whole thing going. If you're interested in supporting me on Patreon, you can head down to a link in the description below that will take you to my Patreon page. All right, so let's look at this new module for D&D and D&D-like games. It's a funhouse dungeon, so it's not meant to be taken very seriously, but it's also quite deadly. So it's definitely an adventure that you would want to let your players know about before you threw it at them. It's also quite funny. So it's designed in the tradition of some of the old TSR modules that didn't make a whole lot of sense. It's fairly gonzo, but it's all about presenting players with jokes and weird situations that are often quite deadly, but entertaining them at the same time. Here's our back cover. So let's get into the material here. So it is all one big mansion, and it starts off with some introductory materials, including who this module is for, the type of group size and balance that you're going to want to have, and what you're going to need to do before you start. Now, quick note right when I begin here, I would have liked this module to have been staple bound instead of glue bound. I know that's a little nitpick, but it does make it a whole lot easier to read when you're able to lay it flat. And so what do they call it? Saddle stitching, which is basically just using staples on the spine, I think would have been really helpful here. It is designed using Skerples' version of the GLOG, the Goblin Laws of Gaming, which is a elaborate OSR hack of old school D&D rules. However, like most OSR stuff, it's going to be broadly compatible with any version of D&D with pretty minimal hacking. Some of the assumptions are that hit points don't really go over 20 to keep that fairly low, but characters that are around third level or so, 3 to 6 mid-level characters, should do pretty well in this. So here's a general map of the entire environment. You have the main floor here. You have some lower floors, and then we have some upper floors, so you can climb a tower over here. There's also a little underground maze that you can explore in the garden. So this is designed to be much less arbitrary than some of the old TSR modules. And I am, in fact, running this at the moment. I have some of my 5th graders in an ongoing campaign where we've already entered the Prismatic Hall, and we've basically just gone through here, checked out the pit trap, and we're in this room, in the Velvet Brocade room. So we've just gotten started. I'll be continuing this this week. So far, it's been a whole lot of fun. Some of the things that I really like about it is that you have really close attention paid to the design of each 2-page spread, which is to say you have a map of the environment, and then all of the descriptions are on the same page. So you never have to flip pages. You can follow this little map as the players walk around, and then each of the room descriptions is right here. That's really, really nice. It really saved me while I was running this, and I hadn't read it in a little while, and I'd forgotten a couple of the rooms, but I was able to look them up very quickly. A small tweak that I would have liked, though, is to have the room descriptions maybe broken up into bullet points or something similar so that they were a little bit easier to scan. Now, most of them are quite short. They're about a paragraph long, so this isn't a big deal. You can read them fairly quickly and interpret that into game speak or into the descriptions that you give your players. But it would have been nice to have the writer do that ahead of time. For example, when I'm reading a paragraph, I have to very quickly parse in my head from this description, what are the things that players can immediately see, which things are hidden, and so on. And all that is kind of meshed together in a lot of these paragraphs. So to make this more usable, I would probably take a Sharpie or a highlighter really, and go through and accentuate the things that players notice right away. That would make describing the rooms much more quick. And then perhaps the more secret or detailed things be put in like bullet points underneath those main descriptions. This is similar to how the Mega Dungeon zine does things, and it's similar to, what's that new Dolmenwood adventure? Winter's Daughter does things. I'm just started reading that, and that's really interesting as well. But yeah, designing the descriptions so that they're easy to parse at the table, and so that you can read them on the fly and give them to players would be really nice. So there are a lot of weird rooms, a lot of traps and so on, but it does a good job, by and large, with giving a lot of clues and a lot of ways that players can detect these things before they happen, or at least that they can detect that this is a joke room and there's probably a twist here. This isn't true in all of the cases. There are rooms where you sit down at a desk or on a chair and it's just a mimic and it just attacks you. And there's a couple other traps like that. At the back of the book, he does a good job with describing ways that a game master could approach this in terms of how to give clues to players so that they know what's coming up, and depending on how much care they're putting into their investigations. I thought that was really great. I haven't seen a lot of other game master advice like that. However, I would have liked to see more clues put into the actual text of the description, so there's less of it that the game master has to make up. But by and large, there are a lot of clues to most of the dangerous things, and players shouldn't be too surprised if they're being careful. The general structure of this adventure is that you're trying to find a spell book, and the spell book is sort of hidden in the basement in the middle of this magical mansion. So in order to get into the basement, though, you need to enter this secret room, and to enter the secret room, you need 4 special artifacts, which are scattered throughout the mansion. So that gives you an incentive to do a pretty thorough search of the whole thing. We have the gardens here, we have the tower. Like I said, great attention to layout, right? You got 2-page spread, you got everything right here. It's very chunky in that sense, right? You got these control panels of information. There's a lot of great little touches here. We have like an art gallery with lots of detailed descriptions of the art that you're going to see, because of course players are going to ask about that. And a lot of them are jokes in and of themselves. You have things like a room called the stationary room, but of course when you walk into it, you freeze in place, you become stationary. So a lot of joke rooms. But once players catch on to the fact that this is a kind of joke mansion, then they're going to be waiting for those puns and those tricks. They're going to be paying attention to them, which is what you want. We have the Mole Dragon's Den, which is a little underground dungeon that you can explore. We have the workshop, and then we have the main underground room with all of the really crazy environmental hazards, traps, and weird magical items. All of which, in true OSR style, can be repurposed for the player's own desires, right? If they're really clever, they can steal some of this stuff and use them to great effect later on in other adventures. We have like a death ray, for example, here, that can fry anything in its path. But of course, there's a lot of disadvantages. How are you going to get it out? It's really heavy, it's really dangerous, and so on. A number of things like that. Great things for wrecking your campaign, which is something that I love doing as an OSR player. We have a little monster manual at the back with a couple illustrations. It would have been nice to have more illustrations, but I mean, art's expensive. So the art that is done here is quite nice. It really gets that old school style very nicely. You have these little Vegemites, these little vegetable people running around your ankles trying to stab you. We have a section of random encounters at the back here, along with omens of the random encounters, which is really nice. So if you roll something up, you can give like these little clues so that players know that they're coming if you don't want to drop it on them right away. Some supplemental tables. We have some magical accidents that can happen quite frequently, and magical fountains. There's quite a few of those in this mansion. We have some traps, and here's the advice I was mentioning, where it talks about how you would describe traps and hazards to players, depending on how they are acting. I love this sort of thing. They're short, like little replays almost. I wish that more books would have examples of play, even extended examples of play, so you have a better sense of how the writer of the book intends it to be played. And one of my favorite things is that you have this unfilled in map. This works especially well because this is a mansion, so players should be able to walk around the outside. They would know roughly the dimensions and shape of the environment that they're exploring, but they wouldn't know the inside. So I photocopied this and gave it to my players, and we're able to draw the map as we go, which saves a whole lot of time, and players can do it themselves. And they have a much clearer sense of how much of the mansion they've explored, which is reasonable because a group of PCs exploring a mansion would probably know that. they would know what areas they've gone through. It'd be harder to get turned around and lost in a confined space like that. So I like that. And there we have it. So this is quite affordable. It's available in print or PDF on DriveThruRPG. As always, I will put a link down in the description below where you can check that out for yourself. Thank you for watching this video. My plan is for my next video to be on Silent Titans, which is the gorgeous Into the Odd adventure created by Patrick Stewart. So keep an eye out for that. I'm still in the middle of reading it. It is quite a tome, but it is incredibly beautiful. Anyway, that's it for today. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.